My name is Pearl, and I am 68 years old. For 42 years, I was a real estate attorney, and the ring on my right hand, a simple platinum band, is not from a husband, but from closing the deal that secured my independence. The retirement party my son and daughter-in-law threw for me at the Maple was supposed to be a celebration. I even bought a new cerulean blue dress. The air was warm with promises that night, the kind that make you believe for a moment that all your sacrifices have been seen. But warmth can turn, and promises can be made of smoke. Before I tell you what happened in that softly lit room, I would love to know where you are joining me from today. Let me know in the comments, and if you have ever felt unseen by your own family, please take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. My journey from that hurt to a decision that changed everything starts right now. The Maple was the kind of restaurant Chloe would choose. All minimalist lines, white orchids, and waiters who moved like silent ghosts. It felt more like a museum than a place for a party. My small circle was there, my longtime paralegal, Barbara with her booming laugh, and my two dearest friends from college, Eleanor and James. They were my island of familiar comfort in that sea of crisp linen. Then there was the other side of the table. My son Michael, looking handsome but strained in a suit that seemed too tight across the shoulders. His wife Chloe, of course, in a sheath dress the color of champagne, her smile as polished as her pearl earrings, and her parents, Greg and Marcia. Greg had a perpetual tan that spoke of golf courses, and Marcia wore the kind of sleek, expensive silence that always felt like judgment. The early part of the evening was a dance of polite conversation. Chloe held court, detailing the renovation of their kitchen. Quartzite countertops, professional-grade appliances, a pot filler over the stove. Each specification was delivered, with a glance around the table, ensuring we were all properly impressed. Greg and Marcia nodded along like proud conductors. Michael sipped his wine, adding a quiet, "Yeah," or "Exactly," when Chloe paused for breath. I was content to listen to bask in the simple fact that my people were in one room. When Barbara asked about my plans, a genuine light of interest in her eyes, I felt a little flutter of excitement. I've already signed up to volunteer as a reading tutor at the library on Tuesdays. I said my voice warmer than I intended. And I found a lovely little studio that offers watercolor classes for beginners. I think it will be wonderful to finally learn how to capture light on paper. The words felt good coming out. They felt like me. For a second, I saw the woman I was, before wills and deeds and raising a son alone took over. Chloe let out a soft, airy chuckle. She leaned toward her mother, her voice a stage whisper that carried perfectly. "Isn't that sweet? Trying to find a hobby now? Better than just sitting around, I suppose." The table went quiet. Not a full silence, but the kind where the background music suddenly seems too loud. Barbara froze her glass halfway to her lips. Eleanor and James exchanged a quick, wide-eyed look. I felt my face grow hot, a prickling flush that started at my neck and climbed to my hairline. My mouth went dry. I looked at Michael. He was studying the stem of his wine glass, rotating it slowly on the tablecloth. as if it were the most fascinating object in the world. He did not look at me. He did not say a word. The message was as clear as if he had shouted it. Do not make a scene. Let it go. So I did what I have done for a lifetime when faced with a slight. I forced a small, tight smile. I took a sip of water. I changed the subject to the unseasonably warm weather. But inside, a small, vital part of me, the part that had just dared to speak about light on paper, curled up and went very, very still. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of clinking silverware and hollow conversation. I heard the sounds, but not the words. My mind was a storm of white noise, punctuated by that phrase. Better than just sitting around. Each time I glanced at Chloe, she was laughing lightly at something her father said, completely unaware of the crater she had blasted in the center of my chest. Or perhaps she was acutely aware. That thought was somehow worse. My mind began to drift, not forward, but backward. It sought refuge in the past, in the years where my role was clear and my sacrifices felt purposeful. I saw myself at 45, a newly minted widow. The grief was a physical weight, a sack of stones I carried on my back. But Michael was 17, his eyes shadowed with a loss he could not articulate. I remember sitting at this very same kitchen table, piles of bills and legal documents spread before me under the harsh fluorescent light. My husband, Robert, had been careful, but life insurance only stretches so far when you have a boy about to start college. I made a choice that night. I would not sell the house, the only home Michael knew. I would not lean on a new man. I would lean on myself. I took on more cases, complicated commercial deals that others found tedious. I became the queen of easements and zoning variances. The platinum band on my right hand was my reward to myself for closing the Henderson deal, a $3 million parcel that put Michael's tuition in the bank. It was my wedding ring to my own resilience. Then came Chloe. Michael brought her home during his senior year of college. She was pretty in a precise way, with a smile that seemed to require calculation. Her family, the Sandersons, lived in a grand house in a neighboring town, but I soon learned from Michael's nervous hints that the grandeur was a facade. There were whispers of debt, of a lifestyle hanging by a thread. I tried. Oh, how I tried. I invited them for holidays, sent thoughtful gifts, bit my tongue when Chloe made subtle remarks about the age of my car, or the classic, not current style of my living room. The memory that surfaced now, sharp and clear as cut glass, was from 8 years ago. It was a rainy Tuesday evening. The phone rang. It was Greg, Chloe's father. His voice, usually so hearty and bluff, was thin with panic. Pearl, I'm in a terrible bind. The import business, the shipments from Italy, it's all gone sideways. The banks are calling in lines of credit. If I can't secure a bridge loan by the end of the month, we lose everything. The house, the cars, everything. I listened, my attorney mind already separating emotion from fact. How much, Greg? There was a long pause. 2 million. Just for 18 months to restructure. You have it, Pearl. I know you do. You're so good with your investments. For Michael and Chloe. For their future. Michael called me an hour later. his voice choked with anxiety. "Mom, you have to help them. Chloe is a wreck. If they lose that house, her parents will have to move in with us. It's a disaster. Please." I thought of my son, of the peace he deserved. I thought of the quiet pride I took in my financial security, built dollar by dollar. With a heaviness in my heart that had nothing to do with the money and everything to do with the feeling of being leveraged, I agreed. But I was not a fool. I drafted a simple loan agreement. $2 million, a 2% interest rate, a fraction of the market. A gift disguised as a business deal. A 5-year repayment term to start after a 2-year grace period. I printed it out. I drove to their oversized, underloved home. Greg and Marcia signed it without meeting my eyes. Michael witnessed it signing his name with a flourish, as if he had just secured a great victory for his family. That was 8 years ago. In 8 years, I had not received a single payment. Not a check, not a mention of the debt, not a thank you. The subject was a ghost. We all politely ignored at family gatherings. And with that silence, I had, quietly, without realizing it, purchased their contempt. I had made it so easy for them to see me, not as their savior, but as a fixture. The quiet, uncomplaining mother-in-law. The reliable, slightly dowdy background character in the glittering story of their lives. Sitting at the maple listening to Chloe talk about their upcoming trip to Tuscany, I looked at Greg's new Rolex. I looked at Marcia's diamond tennis bracelet, a piece I had never seen before. The heat of shame and hurt in my face cooled, hardening into something else. Something solid and cold and sharp. It was the feeling of a balance sheet finally coming into focus. For years, my column was all giving. Theirs was all taking. And they had the audacity to look at the sum of my life and call it sitting around. The storm inside me settled. The path forward, once shrouded in emotional fog, was now illuminated by a single, glaring, unforgiving light. Dessert was served. A fragile-looking berry tart that tasted like ash in my mouth. Coffee was poured. The conversation had splintered into smaller groups. Barbara and Eleanor were deep in discussion, probably dissecting the earlier insult with quiet fury. Greg was telling a long, convoluted story about a golfing mishap to a politely nodding James. Chloe, emboldened by wine and the apparent success of her earlier jab, turned her full attention to me. She adopted a tone of cloying, performative concern. "You know, Pearl," she began, her voice sugary sweet, "we really must get you out of this. Lovely classic style." She gestured vaguely at my cerulean dress, which I had thought was pretty. "I have a fabulous personal shopper at Nordstrom. Let me take you. Update your wardrobe a bit." Her eyes glittered with a malice she could no longer conceal. "We wouldn't want people to think Michael has a tacky old woman for a mother, would we?" The words hung in the air, monstrous and naked. Tacky old woman. The last murmurs of conversation died. All eyes were on our end of the table. Barbara looked like she might launch herself across the linen. Eleanor had a hand over her mouth. Greg stopped his golf story mid-swing. Marcia stared at her daughter, a flicker of alarm, finally breaking through her composed mask. And Michael, my son, my only child. He looked from his wife's smug, smiling face to mine. He saw the devastation she had just willfully delivered. He had a choice in that eternal, suspended second: to defend me, to finally say, enough. He took a breath, and I held mine, a foolish final hope sparking in my chest. Then he exhaled a weary, put-upon sigh. He looked directly at me, his expression one of mild irritation, as if I were a child causing a fuss. "Mom," he said, his voice flat, "don't make a scene. She's just trying to help." In that moment, something inside me did not break. It shattered. It vaporized. The hope, the longing for his approval, the lifetime of putting his comfort first, it all dissolved into a fine cold dust. And what was left was a vast, clear, and utterly calm emptiness. I felt no anger, no hurt. I felt nothing at all for him. It was the most liberating sensation of my life. I placed my linen napkin on the table beside my dessert plate. I smoothed it out with deliberate, slow movements. I looked at Chloe and I smiled. It was not a forced smile. It was a genuine, peaceful smile that reached my eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. I saw a flicker of confusion in hers. "Helpful," I said, my voice calm and clear, carrying in the quiet room. "How interesting. Well, since we're on the topic of being helpful and avoiding tacky appearances," I let my gaze travel slowly from Chloe to her parents. Greg's tan seemed to yellow. Marcia gripped her water glass. "It reminds me." "Greg, Marcia." I leaned forward just slightly. "I've been meaning to ask. With all these lovely new things," I gave a polite, acknowledging nod toward Greg's wrist, "I was wondering when you plan to start repaying that $2 million loan I gave you to save your business and your home. 8 years is quite a generous grace period, even for family, don't you think?" The silence this time was absolute. You could hear the hum of the restaurant's HVAC system. Greg turned the color of old parchment. A bead of sweat traced a path from his temple to his jawline. Marcia made a small choked sound, like a mouse being stepped on. Chloe's mouth fell open. Her eyes darted between her parents and me, the arithmetic of her luxurious life crashing down in real time. What loan?" she stammered. "The one your parents begged me for 8 years ago, dear," I said gently, as if explaining something to a child. "The one my son witnessed. I have the agreement, of course, all signed. I was just reviewing my finances for retirement, and it occurred to me that, with your beautiful new kitchen and your trip to Tuscany coming up, perhaps your family finances had stabilized enough to begin honoring it. A simple payment plan. I am, as you know, very reasonable." Michael shot up from his chair, the legs screeching against the floor. "Mom, how could you do this? Now, here." I turned my serene smile on him. "I did nothing, Michael. I simply asked a question. One that has been overdue for 6 years, according to the terms your father-in-law and mother-in-law agreed to." I stood up, my back straight, the cerulean dress feeling not silly, but like armor. I turned to Barbara Eleanor James. "Thank you so much for celebrating with me tonight. It meant the world." Then, without another look at the frozen tableau of my son and his wife's family, I walked out of the restaurant. I did not feel like a victor. I felt like a woman who had finally remembered how to breathe. The following week was a symphony of outrage delivered via every modern medium. Michael's calls came first, a volcano of filial indignation. How could you humiliate us like that? In front of everyone. You have ruined my relationship with Chloe's parents. Do you know how hard this makes things for me? His anger was a blunt instrument expecting surrender. I listened. When he paused for breath, I said, "She called me a tacky old woman, Michael. And you told me not to make a scene." "That's not the point," he shouted. "You could have talked to me privately." "The point," I said, my voice still and quiet, "is that I have been talking privately for years, with my silence. It was not effective." He hung up. The next call was from a number I did not recognize, but the hysterical pitch was unmistakable. "Pearl, this is Chloe. I need to understand. My parents are saying you are demanding $2 million. This is a misunderstanding. You have to tell them it's a gift, a family gift. You will die alone if you do this. Do you hear me? Alone?" I replied. "It was a loan, Chloe. The paperwork is clear. Your parents understood that. I hope you have a lovely time in Tuscany." And I ended the call. Then came Greg and Marcia, their voices a duet of tremulous desperation. "Pearl, for the love of God, we are family. You know the market is still recovering. That bracelet was a gift from Marcia's aunt. The watch was a milestone present to myself. We will pay, of course, but now it's impossible." I had spent the days since the party in my home office, a room of quiet order. I pulled the file. I scanned the executed loan agreement. I called an old friend Martin, still practicing law. Within 48 hours, a formal, polite letter on Martin and Associates letterhead was in the mail to Greg and Marcia Sanderson. It outlined the original terms, noted the 6-year delinquency on the repayment schedule, and proposed a new 5-year amortization plan with the original mercifully low interest rate. It requested a goodwill initial payment of $50,000 within 30 days to demonstrate intent. I was not trying to bankrupt them. I was not seeking vengeance. I was for the first time demanding that my reality be acknowledged. The reality where I was a creditor, not a patsy. A person, not a prop. The power shift was subtle but profound. The frantic calls slowed. The bluster faded. They were cornered by their own signatures and their own extravagant performance of wealth. Greg sold his beloved vintage Corvette. Marcia quietly returned the diamond bracelet. A cashier's check for $50,000 drawn from an account I knew was Chloe's arrived at my attorney's office. The message was clear. The golden goose was not just awake. She had laid a bill. Michael did not speak to me for 2 months. The silence was a physical ache, a familiar hollow in my heart. But this time, I did not fill it with worry or apologies. I let it be. I let it hurt. And slowly around that ache, I began to build something new. I did not wait for my life to restart. I restarted it. On a bright Tuesday morning, I walked into the community library, not as a visitor, but as a volunteer. My student was a young man named Carlos, 16, with a keen mind that struggled with dyslexia. We worked slowly, patiently. His small victory over a stubborn paragraph felt more rewarding than any closed deal. The following Thursday, I found myself in a sun-drenched studio, smelling of gum Arabic and paper. My hands, so skilled at drafting legal documents, were clumsy with a paintbrush. I made a mess. I laughed a real unguarded sound that startled me. The other students, women and men my age and older, laughed with me. We were all beginners. There was no pretense, no judgment. We shared cookies during break. With the first installment of the repayment, I did not invest it. I used it to book a small, charming inn in Bar Harbor, Maine. I went alone. I packed a sketch pad, my new watercolors, and a stack of novels. I ate lobster rolls at a picnic table overlooking the harbor, the wind tugging at my hair. I painted the rocky coastline, my attempts crude but joyful. I sat in silence and watched the fog roll in, and the silence was not lonely. It was mine. Weeks turned into months. One afternoon, my phone buzzed. It was Michael, not a text. A call. Hi, Mom. Hi, Michael. Can we meet for coffee? We met at a neutral, quiet cafe. He looked older, the strain around his eyes more pronounced. He ordered for both of us, remembering I liked a dash of cinnamon in my latte. A small, almost forgotten kindness. I'm sorry, he said the words, seeming to fight their way out. For that night. For a lot of nights. I nodded. I am sorry too. That it came to that. He stared into his coffee. Chloe and I were in marriage counseling. It is difficult. Her parents are living with us now, in the guest suite. It is a lot. I felt a pang, not of schadenfreude, but of profound sadness. This was the future I had tried to shield him from the very scenario that had prompted the loan. I had succeeded only in delaying it. I reached out and placed my hand over his. I am sorry you are going through that. He looked up, his eyes wet. Why didn't you ever say anything about the money, about how you felt? I took a deep breath. I thought my job was to make things easier for you, to be the steady one, the quiet one. I thought love meant never being a burden. I was wrong. Love also means showing people who you really are, even when it's inconvenient. Even when it means saying, "This hurt me." It was the most honest conversation we had ever had. It did not magically fix everything, but it was a beginning. A new foundation built on truth instead of silent obligation. Today, I am sitting in my sunroom, which I have turned into my painting nook. The morning light is streaming in, catching the dust motes dancing in the air. On my finger, the platinum band catches the light, a quiet testament to a different kind of commitment, the one I made to myself. The journey from that dinner table to this chair of peace was not paved with grand gestures or dramatic reconciliations. It was paved with small, defiant acts of self-reclamation. Signing up for a class, showing up for a stranger at the library, speaking a painful truth aloud. It was about learning that the word no is a complete sentence, and that a boundary is not a wall, but a gate you control. I learned far too late for some people's liking that silence is not strength when it costs you your voice. That generosity without boundaries is an invitation to be taken for granted, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your child is to show them that you are a person, separate and whole, deserving of respect. Not just a mother, not just a bank, but a person. My relationship with my son is different now. It is quieter. There is a new carefulness between us, a space where we are both learning the shape of this new, more honest dynamic. And for the first time in a long, long time, the quiet feels like mine. It feels like peace. If my story resonated with you, I would be so grateful if you shared your own experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had to set a painful boundary with family? How did you find your voice? Let us support each other in these conversations. If you believe in honoring your own worth, please hit the like button. It helps others find these important stories. And if you want to join me for more journeys from heartache to healing, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you do not miss the next real-life tale. Thank you for listening, for sharing this space with me. However you are finding your way, I wish you courage and I wish you peace.